We as Christians need to speak out on moral issues and not let the government take those away from us. And they've taken away, again, the social services that we've done historically, and now they're taken away.
A towering figure in modern evangelicalism, Franklin Graham has long been known for his outspoken faith and global evangelistic efforts. But recently, his ministry has been shaken by events that have left supporters and critics alike both stunned and concerned. What happened that has caused this dramatic shift in the life of one of America's most influential Christian leaders? As questions swirl and emotions run high, the story behind the headlines reveals more than just controversy. It exposes a deeply personal and public struggle that could redefine his legacy. The crisis unfolds. In recent months, Franklin Graham has faced a crisis that has sent shockwaves through his ministry and followers. The controversy began when a series of public statements and actions sparked widespread debate, quickly escalating into calls for greater accountability and reflection within his circle. What seemed at first like isolated incidents grew into a broader reckoning, putting Graham's leadership and legacy under intense scrutiny. This unrest has raised difficult questions about his role as a spiritual leader and the direction of his ministry. The pivotal moment came when some of his views on social and political issues became highly divisive, triggering backlash from both supporters and critics. The response was swift and vocal, with media outlets and religious commentators dissecting his words and their wider implications. While Graham is no stranger to controversy, the scale and intensity of this situation caught many by surprise. It exposed fractures within his base and challenged the stability of the organizations he leads. Amid mounting pressure, rumors and speculation about internal conflicts and possible changes within his ministries added layers of complexity to the developing story. Followers expressed concern over the potential impact on Samaritan's Purse and the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, organizations long intertwined with his family's name. The uncertainty has fueled anxious debate about the future of his evangelical efforts worldwide. Despite the turmoil, Graham has stayed publicly resilient. At least, that's how it looks from the outside. He issued statements, reaffirming his commitment to his faith and also calling on supporters for unity and prayer. Still, the tension between his long-standing public image and the evolving way people are now seeing him has made a kind of fragile atmosphere around his work. A lot of folks are basically waiting to see if he can move through these challenges without doing lasting harm to his influence, if that makes sense. And this episode isn't only a personal problem. It brushes up against larger conversations about faith, leadership, and division in the modern religious scene. The questions people are raising about Graham's stance on contentious issues don't stay neatly inside his immediate circle either. They seem to echo real cultural fractures within American Christianity. What he does next, how he responds and adapts, could end up shaping not just his legacy, but also the way evangelicalism deals with the challenges coming from a world that keeps shifting. At its core, this whole crisis points to how hard it is to balance a public ministry with personal conviction, especially when everything is under intense scrutiny. It's like testing endurance, the kind that comes from decades of mentoring others, and now suddenly, he's the one standing in the spotlight. Whether the storm blows over or ends up rerouting his path is still unclear. That uncertainty makes this a critical moment in his story, and honestly, it feels like there's no easy answer. More than anything, the situation pushes for reflection on spiritual leadership in a polarized age. It brings up the question of how public figures keep trust, even when controversy won't let go. It also makes people wonder how ministries can sustain relevance when there's upheaval inside and pressure from outside. The unfolding events invite us to look deeper into the man behind the headlines, tracing the beginnings that shaped the leader many have come to follow. Born into faith, forged through struggle. Franklin Graham was born into one of America's most renowned evangelical families. As the eldest son of Billy Graham, whose evangelistic crusades reached millions worldwide, Franklin grew up steeped in faith and public ministry from an early age. His upbringing was marked by a blend of spiritual devotion and an awareness of the immense legacy he was born into. This background would influence his own calling and approach to ministry deeply. Raised primarily in North Carolina, Franklin experienced a strict Christian environment shaped by his parents' commitment to Scripture and evangelism. His father's global crusades brought the family into contact with numerous world leaders, faith communities, and cultures. Franklin often accompanied his father on mission trips and church events, gaining first-hand exposure to evangelistic work and leadership challenges. These experiences nurtured his early sense of purpose and dedication. However, Franklin's path wasn't without struggle. He has spoken openly about periods of rebellion and self-discovery during his youth, including time spent away from the church. It was during these formative years that he wrestled with his own faith, eventually recommitting himself fully. This personal journey gave him empathy for those questioning their beliefs and helped shape his approach to outreach. He attended Montreat College, a place that is pretty associated with conservative Christian teachings. And it was about then that he says he felt a real clear call to pastoral ministry, deciding to step into his father's path, but also still bring his own voice and ideas. After he graduated, he was ordained in 1982 and started doing pastoral work in North Carolina. At the beginning of his ministry, Franklin took on assignments in smaller churches where he really sharpened his preaching and leadership skills. Even though at first he worked sort of under the shadow of a well-known name, he kept building a solid reputation for sermons that felt sincere and for ministry that was practical. His attention to evangelism, compassion, and social issues became sort of the thing people linked with him personally. Then, in the 1980s, Franklin began to show up more in the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, slowly moving toward leadership roles. This season felt like a handoff from local pastor mode to more of a national public figure. He used what he learned from home and from experience to launch new evangelistic efforts, with the goal of connecting with younger generations and also wider kinds of audiences. Looking back, those early ministry years show that push-pull between legacy and being his own person. Franklin balanced honoring his father's work with setting up his own ministry identity. It wasn't just something he did, it was a critical runway for the bigger duties ahead and those complicated leadership challenges that came after. Building on this foundation, Franklin's influence would soon extend far beyond pastoral work, moving into international evangelism and humanitarian efforts. Rise to prominence. Franklin Graham ascended to national and global prominence through his leadership of two major organizations, Samaritan's Purse and the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. Appointed president of Samaritan's Purse in 1979, he transformed the charity into one of the most recognizable Christian relief agencies worldwide. Under his guidance, the organization responded to numerous international crises, combining evangelism with humanitarian aid. Samaritan's Purse became known for operating in some of the world's most dangerous regions, providing disaster relief, medical care, and support to refugees. Graham's ability to mobilize resources and volunteers during events such as the Ethiopian famine and the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina significantly raised his profile. His hands-on leadership style and media presence reinforced his image as a compassionate and determined figure. Simultaneously, in 2001, Franklin succeeded his father as president of the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association. This transition marked a new chapter in one of Christianity's most storied legacies. Franklin expanded the association's mission by embracing modern media, launching online evangelistic campaigns and televised events to reach audiences that traditional crusades had missed. His preaching tours drew thousands. A lot of folks came because of his straightforward, no-nonsense approach and his attention to moral plus social concerns. Graham's sermons usually pointed to personal salvation and, at the same time, urged people toward cultural involvement, so it kinda reached spiritual seekers as well as conservative Christians. That double emphasis is like it's locked in his impact across different kinds of audiences. During the early 2000s, Franklin kept leaning on his platforms to talk about world problems, ranging from poverty all the way to religious freedom. His voice became a familiar sound in conversations about what faith should do in public life. Naturally, this brought wide recognition, but it also put him right in the middle of disagreements that never really cooled off. His profile grew even more through partnerships with political leaders and showing up at major national occasions like prayer services and advisory duties too. That kind of visibility, it lifted Franklin Graham past being only a religious leader and made him look like a more visible cultural figure. Still, as his influence expanded, so did the examination, because critics started challenging his positions and the way the ministry gets mixed with politics. Getting through that situation took sharp messaging and a steady internal conviction, even when things got messy. The momentum of all this, it basically set up the later setbacks and the controversies that would go on to test both his leadership and whatever legacy he leaves behind. As we consider these trials, it's important to reflect on the critical moments that have shaped Franklin Graham's public life and ministry. Controversies and public criticism. Franklin Graham's outspoken nature has often landed him in the center of fierce debates, making controversy almost inseparable from his public persona. Over the years, his blunt commentary on politics, social issues, and religious matters has ignited sharp divisions among various groups, both within and outside evangelical circles. Statements on topics such as LGBTQ rights, Islam, and immigration have drawn accusations of intolerance and sparked heated backlash. One particularly contentious issue has been Graham's vocal support for conservative political figures and policies. He has publicly praised certain presidents and endorsed conservative agendas, at times intertwining religious rhetoric with partisan politics. This approach polarized followers, with supporters applauding his courage, while others saw it as compromising spiritual leadership for political gain. Such links between faith and politics complicate the role of religious leaders in public discourse. Graham's comments on Islam have also stirred significant controversy. He has been criticized for labeling Islam as violent and incompatible with Christianity, remarks that many view as generalized and damaging to interfaith dialogue. These stances raised questions about religious tolerance, especially in a world increasingly connected and culturally diverse. Graham defended his views as based on doctrinal differences, yet the fallout affected his standing among more moderate Christians and religious communities. Social issues like same-sex marriage and abortion have seen Graham take firmly traditional stances, aligning with evangelical orthodoxy, but inviting criticism in an era of changing cultural norms. His uncompromising positions have alienated some younger Christians and mainline denominations that lean toward inclusivity. This tension highlights ongoing struggles within American Christianity between conserving tradition and adapting to societal shifts. Besides the public reaction, a few inside the evangelical community have started to show unease. Like Graham's style sometimes trades pastoral sensitivity for plain insistence. His delivery, pretty direct in how it lands, has often been praised for its clarity and conviction, yet it's also been viewed as confrontational, even divisive in some circles. Finding that middle ground where prophetic boldness happens alongside grace stays hard for many folks in his exact position. Even with the controversies sticking around, Graham's influence doesn't really fade. It's carried forward by a loyal base that really appreciates his firm defense of conservative Christian values. But his critics read those same convictions as roadblocks, obstacles really, to a wider sense of unity and also to witness in a society that's now more pluralistic than before. What follows is a kind of polarization wrapped up with Graham, and it mirrors the larger cultural and religious battles playing out across the United States. Media attention tends to magnify it, and too often it squeezes complicated theological points into short phrases like sound bites that keep the cycle going. Social media pushes the whole thing faster, with both support and criticism racing in, and it forms echo chambers that dig the divisions deeper instead of encouraging any kind of understanding. Depending on who's watching, Franklin Graham's public picture flips between a revered spiritual leader and a polarizing person, sometimes in the same week, depending on the audience. Still, Graham keeps speaking out without apology, and he seems to believe that faithfulness to biblical teaching should come before popularity. That steadiness locks in his place as a defining voice within contemporary evangelicalism, even while it guarantees continued public scrutiny and debate that never really rests. The challenges stirring controversy inevitably ripple into the operational and public dimensions of his ministry. Impact on ministry and public image. Recent controversies have had tangible effects on Franklin Graham's ministries, putting pressure on both organizational stability and public perception. Samaritan's Purse and the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association have both faced questions from donors, partners, and the general public about how these disputes may influence their work. Concerns about reputational damage are coupled with fears that polarization could hinder fundraising and outreach efforts globally. Navigating this terrain requires careful balancing of mission focus with crisis management. Samaritan's Purse, known for its humanitarian aid, has seen moments where association with Graham's political or social views complicated relationships with governments and other NGOs. While the charity's work responds to urgent needs worldwide, some partners have expressed unease over public controversies overshadowing its relief efforts. Maintaining the nonpartisan nature of humanitarian missions becomes more challenging amid such scrutiny. The Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, carrying the legacy of one of Christianity's most iconic figures, also grapples with evolving public perceptions. Younger generations of evangelicals and broader Christian audiences increasingly weigh the tone and cultural engagement of leadership alongside theological messaging. Controversies surrounding Franklin Graham's statements contribute to a mix of admiration and alienation among different demographics. Internally, ministry leaders face the task of sustaining morale and unity amid external pressures. Staff and volunteers often navigate the tension between personal convictions and institutional priorities in a highly polarized environment. Ensuring that the organizations remain focused on their evangelistic and humanitarian goals while managing public relations has become a complex leadership challenge. Public opinion polls and social media trends indicate that while Franklin Graham retains a strong base, his polarizing image limits his appeal outside of conservative evangelical circles. This narrowing of influence has implications for the reach and impact of his ministry's messaging. At times, controversy draws attention, but risks overshadowing the core message of hope and salvation central to the organization's mission. Financially, the ministries have stayed sort of resilient, pushed along by loyal donors who seem to value Graham's forthright style. Still, in the long run, everything hinges on whether they can expand, or at least keep the same kind of appeal as the religious terrain shifts and changes. On top of that, the push for transparency and accountability efforts has been pretty loud, mainly so that supporters and the broader public feel more reassured. Meanwhile, the media keeps leaning into disputes, so even a small incident can blow up fast, then start shaping stories that might not really reflect the actual breadth of what the ministries are doing. Because of that, they need communication tactics that are more sophisticated than usual to protect their reputation and also engage constructively with critics. With the consequences of public controversy pressing heavily, the path ahead will test not only his resilience, but also the adaptability of his ministry's mission and message. Challenges and path forward. Facing growing scrutiny, Franklin Graham now stands at a defining point in his ministry. In a divided cultural moment, he faces the challenge of staying loyal to his biblical convictions while continuing to reach people beyond his core audience. His focus remains centered on evangelism, humanitarian service, and the mission that has shaped his public life for decades. To respond to criticism, Graham has worked to clarify his message and emphasize the compassionate side of his ministry. Through media appearances, public statements, sermons, and outreach efforts, he continues to present himself as a leader willing to stand firm while also listening to the concerns around him. Still, many are watching closely to see whether this will lead to a softer tone or a deeper shift in approach. Behind the scenes, his teams are also working to modernize communication and somehow make Samaritan's Purse's humanitarian work more visible. They keep focusing on disaster relief, medical aid, and global service, And the ministry wants to remind people its mission isn't only about preaching, but also about the helping part, especially when folks are in crisis. That kind of compassionate emphasis could be the key to rebuilding trust and reaching a wider audience too. Faith still feels like the foundation of Graham's response to adversity. He talks a lot about prayer, endurance, and spiritual strength, as if those are essential instruments for navigating conflict. For supporters, this just cements his image as a leader who refuses to back down even when the pressure really rises. At the same time, Graham carries this weight from his father, Billy Graham's legacy. That heritage gives his ministry influence, but it also adds pressure to protect the family name while he tries to find his own forward path. In the end, Franklin Graham's future will probably depend on how well he balances conviction, mercy, and credibility. Either he helps bridge divisions, or, instead, he ends up deepening them. His next choices will affect not just his legacy, but the future reach of the ministry. Franklin Graham's journey reveals the challenges of leading faith in a divided world, balancing conviction with compassion amid controversy. His ability to adapt while remaining true to his mission will define his legacy moving forward. If you found this story enlightening, please like and subscribe for more in-depth looks at influential figures and their journeys. Your support helps us bring these stories to life. And before you go, watch the next video shown on the screen, because another powerful story of faith, influence, and controversy is waiting for you.